I am ready to play the game. Are you ready to play the game? What will we call it? Crackpot Conkers? I don't know. But we have 5 Conservative commentators for you, all of whom are responding to news today that the IMF has broken glass and sounded the emergency bell over Kwasi Kwarteng and Liz Truss's tax cuts. Indeed, they have advised, and this is very rare for the economic policy of a G7 country to come under such clear criticism from the International Monetary Fund. They warn, among many other things, that it is pretty much guaranteed to increase inequality. But, of course, your usual suspects, all of them Brexiters, or Brexiteers, as they like to be called, because they think that they're somehow a bit like D'Artagnan and you know, the other fella, Porthos, Aramis, have come out in almost united, except that inevitably they contradict each other. So there's a bloke called Andrew Lillico, who, if you haven't heard of, I feel bad for bringing him to your attention. He writes, embarrassed for the IMF. This is the IMF self-declaring as a left-wing body. The UK should now withhold its IMF contributions. So it's time to leave the IMF. Eventually we're going to leave the solar system, because the worse things get, and the more these pathetic individuals blame others, we've got to leave the European Union, we've got to leave the single market, we've got to leave the customs union, we've got to leave, didn't someone suggest we leave FIFA the other day? Was it during the war? Wasn't one of the 2019 Tory MPs refusing to watch England during the war? Anyway, we've got to leave that. When you define your politics by opposition rather than by support for something, which is part of Keir Starmer's appeal as well, I would say. He stands for things as opposed to being defined entirely by what he's against, whether it's the EU or wokeness or, I don't know, British imperial history or, in this case, the IMF. So it's time to leave the IMF. IMF exit. Be quite careful how I say that. So Lillico is your first contender. I'm going to ask you to vote by text on 84850 on which of these is the most conkers. Okay, so there we go. The IMF is self-declaring itself as a left-wing body, and the UK should now withhold its IMF contributions. Lord Frost, you remember him? Before he was a Lord, he was the head of the Scotch Whisky Association. And now he thinks that he understands international economics better than the International Monetary Fund does. But he has to say, the only way forward for Britain is lower taxes, spending restraint and significant economic reform. Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng are rightly focused on delivering this, and they should tune out the criticism from those who are still in the intellectual world of Gordon Brown. So Lord Frost, former head of the Scotch Whisky Association and architect of the Brexit deal that the Tories are still trying to disown, is asking you to decide between his intellect and Gordon Brown's. That's contender number 2. Contenders ready! Number 3, Daniel Hannan. And this is where I begin to think it's not fair, this competition. The other 4 haven't really got a chance, have they? Hannan's in the game. Daniel, now Lord Hannan, of course, another one ennobled by Boris Johnson for services to idiocy. No, the pound isn't crashing over a trifling batch of tax cuts. It's because the markets are terrified of Keir Starmer. Okay, let's just run through the logic here, and I use the word very, very loosely. What happened on Friday was that Kwasi Kwarteng announced an epic round of tax cuts and public borrowing, and the markets went, whoa, you can't do that. The markets, in fact, did exactly what that well-known communist and supporter of far-left Marxist ideologies, Mr. Rishi Sunak, predicted they would do a month ago. So what the markets did on Friday and continue to do is precisely what Rishi Sunak explained they would do. And Rishi Sunak, of course, is one of those people who has made an absolute fortune by understanding what markets do and don't do. It's what his entire personal wealth is built upon. But Daniel Hannan honestly thinks that what happened on Friday, it was that the trading rooms of London, the Square Mile and Wall Street, had a look at what Kwasi Kwarteng had done and thought, oh, I'm really frightened of Keir Starmer, let's sell the pound. And this is beyond stupid. This is like performance art stupidity. But I don't want to skew the competition. He's in 3. Lilico in lane 1, Frost in lane 2, Hannan in lane 3. A bit of a mascot one now, a bit of a kind of unexpected contender now. Crispin Odey, who used to, of course, employ Kwasi Kwarteng as a consultant many years ago. He's a fund manager. Crispin Odey used to have Kwarteng on the payroll and who made millions and millions of pounds by shorting the pound on Friday, just as he did on the night of Brexit, which he also supported. Now, he says, in direct contrast actually to Daniel Hannan, he says, and I think he's just being mischievous while he makes like Liberace and laughs all the way to the bank, he says that the actual problems, the rout in the wake of Kwasi Kwarteng's tax cuts was actually triggered by, wait for it, are you ready? Remainers in the city who hate the government. So Daniel Hannan claims that it's actually people in the city terrified of a Keir Starmer government, while Crispin Odey claims that it's actually people in the city who hate Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng. And you can tell that he's taking the mickey a bit when he says, amongst lots of friends of mine who are Remainers, they just decided that they hate this government. Obviously, Kwasi they hate now as well, and they think Liz Truss is useless. They can't stand poor Jacob Rees-Mogg. I'm going to have to give you that, Crispin. You're absolutely right. That's in lane 4, Crispin Odey. It's all the Remainers' fault. In lane 3, Daniel Hannan. It's all Keir Starmer's fault. In lane 2, David Frost. It's all the Boogie's fault. And in lane 1, Andrew Lilico. The IMF is a left-wing body. And finally, in lane 5, I give you John Redwood. So the IMF and some big foreign investment banks and funds do not want the UK to be more competitive with lower taxes. Which makes sense not even to people with pencils up their nose and underpants on their head. He goes on, wibble, 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 wibble. And he's in lane 5. So there you have it. John Redwood, essentially continuing his 30-year-old tradition now of being wrong about absolutely everything. In lane 5. In lane 4, Crispin Odey, it's all the Remainers' fault. In lane 3, Daniel Hannan, it's all Keir Starmer's fault. In lane 2, Lord Frost, I blame it on the Boogie. And in lane 1, Andrew Lilico, the IMF is self-declaring as a left-wing body. I don't think we've even got to the comment pages of the Telegraph yet. What a time to be alive. And it's currently Wednesday. This mini-budget was announced on Friday. Send me a text. Who do you think is the king of the conkers commentators? Hannan, Lilico, Frost, Odey or Redwood? And I just say again, I think Odey is really keen to use a swear word at this point. I think Odey is messing with us. I think he's literally counting all his moolah while going, look, I'll tell you what, lads, I'm just going to say something now about Remainers, and I bet you 50 quid. Actually, I bet you 50 million quid. I'll be on the front page of the Daily Telegraph tomorrow. Watch this. Well, hello, yes, Daily Telegraph, Crispin Odey here. I think it's all the fault of Remainers who hate the government. Yes, of course you can. Quote me. Absolutely. Yep, toodle pip. See you in Boodles. Take care. Bye. Puts the phone down, and lo and behold, the Daily Telegraph put it straight on their front pages. And it's still only Wednesday.